Greetings and salutations, guys. I'm going to give my thoughts on Universal Orlando's version of Halloween Horror Nights. I'm recording this from my hotel here at Universal, hence the beautiful backdrop and the lighting that is probably just slightly crappier than my usual crappy lighting. Horror Nights, one of my favorite things of the year, one of my favorite times of the year, events of the year. Love getting to check it out in both Orlando and Hollywood. Hollywood's next week. And I thought this was a really great year. I thought that overall they had a really eclectic lineup. It was so varied. It didn't feel like anything was repeating itself. It didn't feel like the same terrain almost at all was being covered. So even going in, I was excited by that, and I did think it really delivered on that. And that when you went to the houses, you just felt like, oh, that was such a different experience, and what they were even going for, what they wanted to evoke from you was different, and I really appreciated that. I'm really focused on the houses here, but I'll just mention when it comes to the scare zones, I did think that there was a big standout, and that would be the one called Masquerade Dance with Death. This was a classic masquerade, ballroom style masquerade going on where everyone is a vampire, and I just thought the scare actors there were excellent. They were having so much fun interacting with the guests walking through. If you spoke to them, if you went up to them, they would have a lot of fun menacing you. It all looked great. There was sort of a lovely aesthetic to it mixed in with the horror element, and really thought it was just a great time. And then I also want to at least reference the fact that they had these sort of smaller experiences that weren't actual full scare zones, and how much I loved the one for Mel's Die-In. Mel's, where they take the drive-in lighting and they change it to die-in every year, is just a great visual. And last year they leaned into it more with merchandise, and this year they leaned into it even more by having some zombie car hops out front, and they were great. And just the visual of the zombie car hops going by on roller skates, shambling around, and in one case dancing. They're all different kinds of zombies you see with the 50s music playing. It was just a lot of fun, and I liked kind of just hanging out there. And if I had more time, I would have hung out there more, maybe on a return visit. But let's get to the houses. And there are 10 houses, so easy top 10, except you're going to notice I start with number 9. And that's for a reason, because spoiler alert, I'm going to give a tie for number 1. I went back and forth on this a lot, but that's where I'm settling on. So let's jump in here with number 9, Grave of Flesh. I love the original concept houses at Horror Nights. There is so much imagination to them. This one just, I thought, dropped the ball. The idea that you're literally kind of going into your own grave is a cool concept, and I liked the beginning of it as that happens, and as you realize you're descending into the grave further and seeing other corpses, and I was kind of anticipating where it was going to go, and then it just kind of felt very mundane. The further you go in, the more it gets into freakier sort of creatures down there, and a couple of them looked cool, but there wasn't really a lot of pizzazz to it. There wasn't a lot to stand out about it, and it just kind of felt like the one original concept house that just didn't have that spark, unfortunately. Number 8, kind of a bummer for me to say it's number 8, but sad but true. Jason Universe, love me Jason, love me Friday 13th. Always happy to have Jason back at Horror Nights, where he has had a great presence in the past, but this just felt like very underdone. And the idea that it was going to go through sort of Jason's history was really cool, but it's just Jason jumping out at you over and over again. And look, I'm all about that, but I wanted to see more. I wanted to see more of the actual sequences from the movies. There's very little of that, very little of sort of recognizable victim characters. There's a couple here and there. The thing I loved the most about it was that Pamela Voorhees is a strong presence in it. I love Pamela Voorhees. I love, her in the first movie, and you don't get to see her a lot in the previous houses. Usually it's just kind of a little bit there, maybe the head, which they had here as well. But to see her as an actual scare actor, very ingrained in it, I like that a lot. But yeah, it just kind of felt like a lot of Jason jumping out at you. The very end, where it's a gauntlet of Jasons, that was great. Where he just keeps coming out, he just doesn't give you any rest, and it's a lot of different Jasons from all the different movies. That was super fun. Has a conclusion. I just felt what they needed before that was to differentiate more versus just the visual of Jason, as great as Jason is. At number 7, and really everything being good to great from here on out, I'm going with Hatchet and Chain's Demon Bounty Hunters, which is a spin-off of last year's Slaughter Cinema 2. They've done this before with the Slaughter Cinema concept, which is kind of a old drive-in theater where they're showing a bunch of movies, and they've done kind of these pilots almost. You get to see these little glimpses of these little stories when they do Slaughter Cinema, and they've pulled out ones before from that. And this year it was Hatchet and Chains' turn, and I really like that concept when it was in Slaughter Cinema, which is basically a cowboy and his demon pal that are demon hunters together in a Wild West setting. And so happy to get more of that. I thought they could have gone a little further with it, has its own individual house. It was fun, but it was sort of a little bit basic fun, but there was still some clever touches. I like when there's bullets firing all around you and you actually see them like light up on the wall. And the finale involves a train going by, which was done with sort of just projection of a train speeding by, but it was effective in the moment. There was a couple of good jumps in it. One was just a really loud noise next to me that got me really good because it wasn't even a scare actor. It was just sort of a dummy in the wall. It proves that you can get people every time if you have a loud noise right next to your ear. So I liked seeing the aesthetics of this, of the cowboy versus demon idea. I think they could have maybe just gone a little further with it, but still enjoyable. Number six is Dolls Let's Play Dead. Look, creepy dolls are always very effective. Horror Nights has done creepy dolls plenty of times. Not just the names you'd know from movies like Chucky and Megan, but they've done their own original concept houses in the past that involve dolls. So it is a return to a sort of subgenre they know well, but I thought that they gave you another really good spin on it here because the idea here, very sort of Toy Story Midway Mania, but the Horror Nights twist on it, which is that you are toy size, that you're walking through this house where you have been shrunk down and you are amongst the toys. Also Toy Story inspired because it feels like there's a Sid-esque kid, in this case, a little girl who's doing horrible things to these toys, to these dolls that, you are wandering amongst. Just great visuals, creepy, melty, human-sized dolls. It just works. And, there's the clear sort of influence. There's a Ken-esque doll who also then becomes sort of a G.I. Joe-esque doll at one point. Classic baby dolls. And they all looked great. And I thought that there was some really unsettling touches amongst this house. So while it wasn't anything sort of hugely new on the concept level, I just thought, this was a really cool one to look through. And I loved when they gave you the visual of the actual sort of weird little girl, whatever her story is, I'm not sure of, but I am curious about as she was looking through the window at that one point. That was a really cool touch. Number five, we have Galkin, Monsters of the North. I'm not going to pretend I completely understood the story to this house, which involved a woman who was denounced as a witch, and now she's come back for revenge, and there's different forms she's taking. I just thought it was really cool. It looked really cool, the visuals of it, and it escalated in a great way. It reminded me of how Grave of Flesh didn't deliver as it escalated as he went through, and then this was kind of doing what I wish that house had done. As you go further, these different creatures, different forms of this woman coming at you, and it just got into some bigger and bolder places. I love the use of light in this house quite a bit, all through in the walls, into the effects. The flame, the way they do the pyre at one point is awesome. The mixture of just lighting effects with some, film footage intermixed there. It all worked really well to give it sort of this grand scope as you're going through. Then there's this giant head near the end. I have no idea what the hell that thing is, but I thought it looked great. And some of these Horror Nights houses really do go there as far as like the puppeting and the uh, bigger creatures. In recent years, I think they've gone even further with that. And this was an excellent example of that, and giving you a big finale that I thought, was really effective, even though, again, I wasn't quite sure what the story was. Number four is Fallout. And, to be fair, I think this is a case where if you don't know the games or the show, you might have the same questions I had about Galkin that everyone might have about Galkin because it's a lot of weird imagery. Now, I have watched this show and I love the show, so I was just really happy to be in this universe. But I also understand that without the context of knowing that, uh, why is there sort of a zombie cowboy? Why are some people in this vault? Why is there a giant armored dude? I don't think that this house can succinctly explain that, nor should it be beholden to. I just thought they did a really great job of transferring that imagery from the show into the real world, taking you through a lot of different set pieces, a lot of different episodes from the show. Having scare actors play all sorts of characters from the show, even kind of small peripheral ones. I thought that was great to have so many of the characters, so many familiar faces pop up throughout, along with, Lucy and the ghoul and Maximus be there consistently. And by the way, they had Lucy say her catchphrase more than once, and that's really all I needed from this house.
Okie dokie.
And they gave it to me at least a couple of times. So I was happy. But no, I did think that this was just, it was a really cool world going in already, even though it's not quite straightforward horror. There are horror elements to Fallout. I thought it made for a really fun house because it's got so much going on. It is so jam-packed with different visuals that kind of lay on top of each other. Number three, I'm going with WWE Presents The Horrors of the Wyatt Six. It was interesting at the media event for Horror Nights talking to people and how many people were naming this as the house they were least excited for. Certainly when it goes to the familiar IP that was being adapted, it was the one that people were underwhelmed by on the announcement. Uh, I am a WWE fan. I am a huge fan of Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt Six. So I was very excited this was happening at all. But I understand that a lot of people have no background with wrestling and won't understand why they're even doing a house based on anything WWE. And it's going to be hard for them to be excited by this. And I have no idea if those people were sold at all by this. Maybe it made them intrigued about what's going on. I have my own personal connection to it, and the fact that I think that Bray Wyatt was so imaginative and really had a great mind for horror. And also the fact that he had been talking to Mike Aiello and people at Horror Nights about possibly doing a house before he passed away. It's very poignant and, touching that this is even happening. Again, if you don't have that knowledge and that backstory, that won't affect you. So a lot of, personal investment here that I'm not the only one that will bring, but I think that will affect you going through this house. But I do hope people who don't know it at all will just think that was interesting. What the hell's going on there? That this is part of wrestling because Bray Wyatt's story was so intricate. There's so much lore and it pulls from all of it. And yes, it involves the Wyatt Six, which is like a current wrestling stable that is sort of descended from what Bray Wyatt did, but it also has Bray himself and his history and the Firefly Funhouse and all these great things. It really does take you through sort of the Bray Wyatt story, lots of great nods and elements. I was very excited that Alexa Bliss gets to appear as part of the story here and a scare actor playing her, as I hope.
Let him
Because again, it goes so far back. There were so many iterations of Bray Wyatt, so many different things he did, personas he had, and it's really cool to see it in this form. I actually saw the Undertaker house back in 2000 in Los Angeles when they did that at Horror Nights in Universal Hollywood. Never thought they'd return to WWE. Very, very happy they did because this is the place to do it. I don't think there's any other person right now in WWE that you could pull out for a Horror Nights house. But Bray Wyatt, what has continued with the Wyatt Six, it just lends itself to it. And I thought this was a really amazingly done tribute to everything that he created in his life. Number two is Five Nights at Freddy's. And you're going to hear me say this again about being into a Horror Nights house more than I am into the actual property it's based on. I think that's a really great thing about Horror Nights is you don't have to like the movie, TV show, game that something is based on to be impressed by the house that they make based on it or know it at all. And with Five Nights at Freddy's, I know the games and I've seen the movie and it's all fine to me. It's not a favorite, but I do think these are great looking characters and they lent themselves to and ended up with a really strong Horror Nights house. It looks great. The entire setup, the scenario, this Chuck E. Cheese type scenario with these characters, it's just a great situation to walk through in real life. And these characters look great in front of you, like the movie The Jim Henson Creature Shop, worked on the animatronics for the house, and it shows because they are so skillfully done. They all look creepy and cool. You could imagine the limitations they had to have non-stop animatronics. So there's some points where you just see, say, an arm busting through the wall, but I think that's really effective. And I think it also helps that it's not all feeling the same. The way these characters appear, it's different whether they use shadows, whether you see them directly in front of you, whether you see parts of them in front of you. It all helps change it up. The way it's all lit, very ominous. I love the sort of use of music and sound effects throughout. And I think these characters just really pop in this setting. Honestly, the Horror Nights house makes it a little more spooky and scary than the movie with its PG-13 rating. The Horror Nights house, it doesn't go like super far. It's not going into like demented territory, but it leans a little more creepy with what's going on just walking through it and kind of feeling that all around you. Really enjoyed this one. And I think that Five Nights at Freddy's obviously a hugely popular franchise. I would not be shocked if this returns to Horror Nights. The sequel is coming out later this year. I am expecting there's a very good chance we're going to get another Five Nights at Freddy's house based on the wait times. I also think that is a good chance because this was one of the two most popular houses. The other one is going to be the next one I speak about. So my number one pick for Halloween Horror Nights Orlando for their best house of the year, yeah, it is a tie. Two different houses, very different houses. I'm going with at number one. I went back and forth about which I thought should be number two, which should be number one, and then I thought I'm going to make them both one because they're so different. And they both bring such different things to the table, and I love that they both exist and that Horror Nights can give you uh, absolutely different experiences like this that are both so effective. So, first off, number one is Terrifier. I don't like these movies. I don't think they're good movies, but Art the Clown is a great creation. He just pops. The visual of him is so great. The performance is great. And of course, I understand that the movies, the kill scenes, they're so over the top. They are almost meant to be offensive. I got why this would make for a good Horror Nights house. And in some ways, I think this is the ideal form for Terrifier. Walking through, a greatest hits of Art the Clown and these murder scenes from the series that are so grisly and brought to very evocative life in this house. It's kind of this fever dream because you're walking through and all three movies are pulled from, and it is gross and nasty in just the way that Terrifier is. There is plenty of blood, there's plenty of poop, and there are people being eviscerated. There's things being done to people that are so awful, like in the movies. They didn't hold back. I'm not including a lot of footage here because I think the video might be in trouble if I did, but I thought it was pretty awesome as a Horror Nights house. It really felt like this was where art is meant to be at Horror Nights. They had art also wandering around Horror Nights as just like a roaming character, and that felt great too. So Terrifier just really worked as a Horror Nights house. I will say the one disappointment is the end with the big wet or dry path that you were supposed to choose. I thought that the wet path, the whole idea is you're going to get covered in blood, which we understand is water, but there were no interesting visuals to that. You just walk through a room that is lit red and they are dumping water on you and you're going to get very wet. But I wanted to have some corpses. I wanted that blood coming out of people above me. It's the very end of the house. So I still think it's an amazing house. I went through it a second time and I thought, yeah, this is awesome. But that's the one note I have is that ending was disappointing. Otherwise, though, it just brings you through this insanity of Art the Clown. And like I said, as someone who thinks the movies aren't very good as actual movies and more as a delivery system for these set pieces, this is kind of the greatest way to experience Terrifier, I think, is going through this house and just seeing the depravity right before your eyes, just seeing it all happen. And my other choice for number one is El Artista, a Spanish haunting, which is a very classic haunted house scenario, original concept that involves an artist in the 19th century who is in a giant manor that is haunted by all sorts of things, and his anguish as you walk through it and sort of experience that alongside him. I just thought this was beautiful to behold. the original concept houses in the past, there's been sometimes where they just go massive with the scale, and that was El Artista this year. Just what you actually see walking up to the entrance was incredible, but then walking through it, everything was huge. Everything felt like a legitimately giant home you were walking through. They made such good use of the fact that they can go so big at Horror Nights in Orlando and have those big sound stages. The gargoyles swinging above you was awesome. And I loved that you could see through windows to what's ahead. You know, these Horror Nights houses are usually about the mystery of what's around the next corner. This one kind of reversed that, and they were showing you what's to come and letting you know that this is massive and that this feels like a real home. And you can see that, wow, this keeps going. Just looked great. All the effects were great. All the scare actors were great. There was a mood to this, an atmosphere to this. It's the polar opposite of Terrifier because Terrifier is gross and grungy and just in your face with the nastiness. This is beautiful and, feels this sort of mysterious feel to it all and this lovely, strange, evocative feel, but also highly effective. And I loved going through this house, which is why it is sharing the number one spot with Terrifier for a very strange double bill. All right, those are my thoughts on the houses for Halloween Horror Nights Orlando in 2025, aka Halloween Horror Nights 34. Argue with me in the comments if you will. But no, a really great year. It just, I thought, it was such an interesting year as far as delivering such different experiences, and I love that. All right, if you can like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. I'll be back with my thoughts on Horror Nights in Hollywood, in a few days around the corner. That's it for now. Thanks, guys.